What's up? Welcome in. Hoge Jahns back with you, getting closer and closer to the NFL draft. 2 weeks away from right now as we're recording on Thursday morning. Johnsy, what's going on?
How much paper did you use in printing out the beast this year, my friend?
You know, I haven't printed it out yet.
But you always do.
Yeah, well, I have it. Usually I have it printed. Someone last year, I think it was a listener of this show or CHGO or both. I didn't come till after the draft, but one of our listeners owns a printing company or something and sent me a copy. And I cannot find he put his card in there and I cannot find it.
It's a good friend to have.
Yeah, I know.
Shame on you.
So if that guy's listening, reach out to me, please. Because I've been taking it to the FedEx store the last couple of years. It costs like $70 to print it out there.
I can tell you that in a couple weeks, I think actually during the draft week, that Chicago is one of the cities where the beast will be available in print for purchase at some stores.
After the draft, though?
No, during the draft week.
Oh, during draft. Okay. Well, that could still be helpful. I will say, they've done a great job with it this year because it's way more interactive online. And easy to click through.
But I'm old school. I went straight to the PDF version. That's what I got.
Trust me. I mean, I got it right here on my iPad, and that's how I've been writing notes and highlighting. So it works on here too. We're good to go. The beast is out. It's always exciting. It looks great. Probably better than ever. Great job by Dane Brugler, as always.
We should be talking to him here probably sometime next week.
Okay. So, again, you have to be an Athletic subscriber to get it, but you already should be if you're listening to this show, theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns. You can be following us at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns, and, of course, all of our merch, including that shirt that Johnsy's wearing today, HoganJahns.com. Great time to be loading up on your T-shirts for the summer, your golf polos. We got our Hoge Jahns golf polos up there.
I get a lot of compliments on the blue pullover. Whenever I wear it, someone's always like, that's nice. And, I'm very thankful that they end up purchasing it later. But check it out. It's a big hit out there, apparently.
Especially right now because the weather's being stubborn. So, you need a good quarter zip if you're going to go golfing, which I'm planning on soon. Hopefully, it's just torture waking up on this Thursday morning with the Masters going on and looking out my window. Man, it's 35 degrees out. This is bullshit.
And wet. After raining for 6 hours yesterday.
Yeah. Well, we are going to be draft heavy again today. We've got a fun episode planned for you. Eric Edholm, old friend of ours, who is the lead draft analyst at NFL.com. I mean, this is the shield. This is the top as you can go. NFL. Working for the league, draft analyst. And what we thought we'd do with him is try to just walk through the first 9 picks ahead of the Bears. What are the possibilities? Where can this go? He's got a brand new top 100 that he just had come out yesterday. You can find on NFL.com. And we'll get into some other conversation, but we've sort of been in the weeds on some of these positions, but we haven't necessarily talked about how this can all play out in the first 9 picks ahead of the Bears. And Eric's obviously got a good idea of draft needs and how this could all go with the teams ahead of the Bears. So we'll jump in right now. Let's bring in Eric Edholm, have that conversation.
Eric, always good to have you on. First question for you. I'm looking at your top 100 list right now on NFL.com. Are you ready for your number 10 player to go first overall? And what does that feel like?
I am prepared for it. Yeah, I've had that feeling for at least a couple weeks anyway. I mean, it seems like that everyone has been sort of connecting the dots. I think the first couple of days of free agency became clear that Cam Ward was going to be their guy just based on their movements at certain positions, offensive line, not doing anything at the position. And I just said, look, I can't endorse this guy past a certain point. I think he absolutely has skill, but you got to weigh it with the talent available and not get swept up in the idea that there's a bona fide superstar every year at quarterback. So I'm fully prepared and ready to go on that one.
So yeah, it kind of seems like that's where it's headed with the Titans at number one. What we thought we'd do with you is kind of walk through these these picks that are ahead of the Bears, and so the Browns maybe in the last week or so we've maybe gotten a little bit of leaning on where they might go, but it seems like they won't reach on a quarterback, but instead maybe go the Travis Hunter route.
That seems to be the case. They sent the big contingent, including Jimmy Haslam, the owner, who finally sort of took some ownership, some blame for the Deshaun Watson situation. Threw his wife in there too, just for good measure. But seeing him and Deion Sanders talking, I mean, it was like a year ago that we heard Sanders pretty openly suggesting that the Browns were not an option for his son, but it kind of made people think who were in attendance. I talked to a guy who was there. He's like, you see the Giants had a big group of people there. You see the Browns. He's like, which one are they looking at? Are they looking at both? Right. So, but over the weekend, it felt like a lot of people shifted from Abdul Carter in that spot to Travis Hunter. And, that seems to be the consensus. Now, whether they swing back and take a quarterback later, I don't know. I think they will. Kirk Cousins is also an option, but I'm with you guys. I think Hunter's the most likely pick, and Carter felt like the guy to me at least. But things change.
You have Carter over Hunter. Are you? I mean, do you disagree with Cleveland going that route?
I mean, I have them 1 and 2 in my board. Obviously, I think they're both pretty special. They're the two guys that I would endorse trading up for at the top of the draft. I mean, just in a vacuum, right? Obviously with Carter and Myles Garrett, you could have a devastating pass rush duo, and their defense is pretty darn good. You would have it. Their defense would be pretty set. You then just have to completely turn the focus to the offense and say, all right, let's start crossing off some boxes there. With Travis, maybe you get help at 2 different positions. Now they're not exactly hurting at corner, but they're definitely hurting at wide receiver. So I understand what their thinking is on that.
And some star power comes with it, I think. Even though Abdul Carter would bring it, I think Travis Hunter, for everything he did last year.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. This comes with him. All right. So we got number 1, Titans, Cam Ward, quarterback. Number 2, Browns, Travis Hunter, Mr. Do Everything. 3 is where it gets kind of interesting, right? Like if you're the Bears, you're hoping a quarterback is taken here, but how do you feel the Giants will act? Like what are you hearing? What are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting, right? When the Hunter news to Cleveland started breaking, very shortly thereafter, news broke that they were going to meet with Abdul Carter. And, maybe subconsciously, a lot of us were saying, well, the one that makes sense, the combination that makes sense for both teams is Carter at 2, Hunter at 3, right? That's nice and clean. This is less clean because, they went out and traded for Brian Burns not long ago. They went out and drafted Kayvon Thibodeau not long ago. That's one of their team's strengths, I would argue, pass rush. I mean, that could they use a third guy? Absolutely. But, I mean, those 2 guys are pretty interesting at least. And then you have Carter's medical history and then the quarterback question. How much does Russ on a pretty cheap 1-year deal and Jameis Winston on a pretty cheap 2-year deal truly offer you? Long term, not that much, nothing really. So I think they're very much in the quarterback business for this draft. I just don't think it's at this pick, and I don't necessarily think it's Shedeur Sanders. Now, maybe they're letting out word that they're not interested in him, and they really are. It's possible, but kind of the breeze has been blowing in a different direction for me, at least when I've tried to connect the dots. I see them more likely being a Jackson Dart team, or if it gets late enough in the draft and they haven't got their quarterback, Tyler Shuck or Quinn Ewers or somebody like that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't sense that same kind of urgency. Remember, this is a GM and a head coach who want to win now. So I don't know how much, they're going to have to find somebody, whether it's Carter or an offensive lineman or Mason Graham, who can help out right away.
Well, not only do they want to win now, they have to.
They have to.
This is the most, in terms of job preservation, I feel like the most desperate spot right now in the league. And that's why I find this pick here at 3 to be so fascinating. Now, my gut, and I think all of our experience around this league would tell you that most teams in this situation that don't have a clear-cut quarterback, I know they went out and signed Russell Wilson, but as you explained, like long-term solution. We know they wanted to trade up last year. Didn't really work out. They didn't go that route. They ended up with Malik Neighbors. Most years I'd say, well, this is the team that's going to get desperate.
Right.
Make a swing at quarterback. So I still feel like that's on the table, but given the perhaps lack of obvious options there, I'm trying to think of what else would be a desperate move by them. And this is the team, Eric, that just let Saquon Barkley walk despite the owner basically telling the GM not to let that happen in public on Hard Knocks. Like, is there any chance that if the desperate move is to take Ashton Genty here to make up for what they did wrong last year?
It's possible. I think, like you said a week ago, it almost felt like Travis Hunter was just sort of being manifested to them. And so you were picturing, him and Malik Neighbors together. That's offensive boost for whoever ends up at quarterback, or possibly a corner. That was a trouble spot for him. Like, there was a formula that made sense. Now you take that out of the equation and you say, other than Neighbors, what do they truly have to count on offense? Right. And, it would certainly be interesting. I don't know how Giants fans would take it. Obviously, Genty's reputation is pretty sterling, but by now everyone kind of has especially New York, the irony of wanting a guy to fill Saquon Barkley's shoes after for years saying he was overdrafted at number 2. That would be kind of an amusing storyline to develop, but I suppose it's possible. I think they would try to look to trade down in that situation, but I mean, Carter, look, they also could try to trade Burns at some point. He's still relatively young. I think he's only 27 right now. So, if that contract got too big, or you wanted to pay Thibodeau or trade Thibodeau for that matter, I mean, I still think that they would default by either going Carter or looking to move down. But who's coming up? I don't know. I guess you can't rule out a Genty to New York situation, but it would be amusing.
Yeah, Genty's your third best prospect. He's Dane Brugler's third best prospect. But still, just because of the position he plays, you're moving him down when you're going through your simulations and your mock drafts.
I mean, yeah, pretty much. I even said at one point, I don't remember if it was in this top 100 or in the other one. I mean, Genty being third, I think is much reflective of the lack of blue chip talent in this class. Again, I don't think it's a terrible draft. It's just a very interesting one in that there aren't very many guys up top that would be slam dunk, no doubt, top 10 picks almost in a year, right? I think I would have had a slightly higher grade on Bijan Robinson, had apples to apples if they were in the same class. So, I mean, not by much, but I think I would have had him that much higher. And, that on top of the fact that it's a deep running back class and that there's still suspicion about taking running backs that high in the draft. Yeah, you do kind of just keep inching them down. It's funny because I put my first mock draft right around Senior Bowl time. I put Genty to the Raiders at 6, which of course now has become a very popular. Got yelled at it then, but it's become the position now. I mean, if he doesn't go there, or if he doesn't go to the Giants or some other team, that's the really interesting question is when that first domino at running back falls. When it falls at tight end too, those are two positions that don't usually field a ton of first round talents. And so you have to keep that in the back of your mind, I think.
Yeah. So who are we putting down for the Giants? Carter?
I would probably put him there now. I think they'll, as long as they're okay with the medical, they'll probably talk themselves into him if I had to guess.
Yeah, because you got to think, I mean, you talk about the lack of blue chip talent. I mean, he's one of those guys.
He's one of them.
It would be tough to pass on him there with the third pick. Let's move on to the Patriots then at 4. They might be feeling like they're just outside of that top tier of guys. What are you thinking with New England here?
They really have reinforced the defense quite a bit. And the one offensive tackle they signed was a true right tackle, Morgan Moses. Like, he's been a right tackle since the day he was born, I think. So, it's even if you say like they need an offensive lineman, that's great. But take Armand Membu from Missouri. He has strictly been a right tackle as well. Are you going to all of a sudden teach him left tackle on the fly? They tried that with the kid from Purdue last year, Caden Wallace, and didn't really work. Now they don't know what to do with him. Different staff, but still, I mean, if you're thinking tackle, like if they're locked in on that position, it's probably Will Campbell if I had to guess. I just think he kind of fits what Vrabel wants a little bit more. You remember he went with Peter Skoronski, obviously a local connection to Chicago, and it moved him to guard, but still I think would have played him at tackle had he needed to. Kind of a similar prospect in some ways. I would say Will's a little bit more ornery when he plays, but maybe Peter's a little more gifted, a little more athletic, but it's I could see him just saying, forget the arm length question. We need that guy. There are other players who make sense for them there, but like their biggest needs would be a pass rusher, wide receiver, offensive tackle. The one position that kind of lines up at that spot is probably Campbell or Membu, but I will go Campbell.
I love when you read about his intangibles too in Campbell. So if you're like looking for a tone setter, a captain, just one of those inspiring guys to get behind.
Oh yeah,
tone setter. Like there's your guy at pick 4. I could just see him being such a Patriot Mike Vrabel like pick too. Because
I mean, when I talked to Emory Jones, who was the right tackle, and asked him about Will, like he was gushing. He was like, yeah, "This is the guy who's kind of helped shepherd me through the process and help watch over me." And it's like you hear enough of those stories that it makes sense that he is where he is today. He's been very successful in the SEC, and I don't think the arm question is really going to hold him back.
I love this from Dane. Like flips the switch on the field and prides himself on playing nasty. Wired to block through the whistle. His high school coaches say he had a hard time avoiding flags because of his aggressive play style. Relentless worker and was named a team captain as a sophomore and junior by Brian Kelly. Just love it. Love it.
Yep. Checks all those boxes off. He just makes a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah, he just got Vrabel written all over him. It seems like I just see those guys getting along. All right. So Will Campbell, the guys we've kind of talked about, is really the first one of maybe the guys in Chicago that we've discussed a lot here coming off the board, possibly falling to 10. So Campbell, we're going to the Patriots. Now we go to Jacksonville at number 5. What are you thinking here, Eric?
First-year GM, James Gladstone, first-year head coach, Liam Cohen. I mean, hard to really know what to expect. Obviously, both have ties to the Rams, more Gladstone than Cohen, but still both. So you obviously can look at the roster. They did help the secondary out. I think you could argue that offensive line is probably still an issue for them. D-line is probably still an issue for them. But secondary a little better, so they don't feel panicked to make a pick at that spot. They need another receiver. But, yeah, everyone's been just chalking in Mason Graham to this spot. And I get it. I mean, I think this year he's probably worth a top 5, 6, or 7 pick. Again, just a lack of sort of true firepower at the top. And he's an excellent football player. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying in a typical year, maybe he goes 9th or 10th or something, or 8th or whatever. But, yeah, I think that's the position. Like I keep wanting to go some other spot or some other player, and I can't quite make it work out. And I'm not trying to force anything here, but I could argue maybe Membu would make some sense. Now they did just draft Anton Harrison a couple years ago. So, they'd have to figure out to see a left tackle. You move Walker Little to the bench, but it's a lot cleaner to just take a D tackle who's going to be a, 40 to 50 snap guy per game, plug him in there, pair him with 2 pretty good rush ends and say, all right, we'll try to win the way the Rams did the last couple of years, but loading up on the defensive line.
Would you be surprised if a receiver like sneaks in here at 5, given we have an offensive-minded coach, you could help your quarterback and whatnot?
I put Tyler Warren there a couple mocks ago. I can't remember exactly which version of it, but I was just thinking along those lines, like first-year head coach, he's got Brian Thomas. What else does he truly have that he can hang his hat on as an every down, dependable force on offense? I don't know that he has that much. Trevor Lawrence has questions. The offensive line's incomplete. Trevor Etienne hasn't been great. So the idea of adding an offensive piece of some sort is not a crazy thought at all. I just don't know if there's to me, Warren would be a, little bit of a reach there, a tight end at number 5. We don't see that too terribly often. And it may not be exactly what they want. So I do think receivers in play, but is Teteroya McMillan or Matthew Golden or Luther Burden or any of these guys worth the 5th pick? I would argue probably not. That's just my personal take. I don't know what James or Liam think, but it's in play.
See, I'm glad we're doing this way because we're already kind of falling into a territory that I imagine teams are feeling similarly too. Like we're already trying to talk ourselves into guys that probably, and you've mentioned this multiple times already, Eric, in this conversation. Like,
Yeah.
if it was a different year, maybe this guy's going in the teens or in the 20s, and now we're already starting to talk about like, well, does he make sense for this team here at number 5?
Right.
It's just a weird spot. Not only that the Bears are in or 10, but some of these teams even ahead of them.
I mean, I think it helps that some of their positions of need, you sort of match up with what the draft offers strength wise. I think it helps from that perspective. What would help more, obviously, for the Bears if a quarterback went in the first 9 selections, besides Cam Ward for that matter. But yeah, I mean, that would obviously be a more ideal situation. But there are scenarios where a couple of pass rushers are gone. What if the Raiders go in a different direction? Are they truly prepared to take somebody like Genty or Warren or somebody? I mean, I don't say they're doomsday scenarios, but there are some combinations up top that could put the Bears in an interesting spot at number 10.
All right, so we're putting Mason Graham down. Is that the plan?
I think so.
All right. Raiders are on the clock, and is this your Genty pick? You sticking with it?
I've heard some Jalen Walker buzz. I don't know. I've also heard Carolina with Walker too at 8. So just to make it cleaner, I think you pick Genty here, you're probably not too far off. Now, I don't know that it's guaranteed to happen, but Pete Carroll, run game, you're helping Geno out in a big way. Yeah, they probably need more receivers, but they have a number 1 target in Bowers right now. I mean, he's in a I guess a respectable number 2 option in Myers, but yeah, I mean, their run game lacked explosiveness last year. Genty's probably a better receiver than he showed in 2024. I thought it was pretty evident in the 23 season he could catch the football pretty actively and well. And I don't think he's like I've heard some people say like LaDainian Tomlinson. I can't quite go there. That's one of my favorite running backs of all time. But he's got that kind of starter kit. He's got that template there. I love the way he bounces off contact and keeps flying. And I think he'd be a big hit out there. It would be good for Geno too. I mean, from what I've heard, Genty's such an unassuming guy. Like he's not a attention seeker. Geno would be like the spotlight, and I think he would attract some attention away from the rookie. So, it makes some sense, even if I've heard some defensive players there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Jalen Walker because, I don't think he's a player on the radar for the Bears at defensive end. Just doesn't fit the physical profile.
Dennis Allen,
of Dennis Allen. But like in your top 100, you compared him to Nolan Smith. And just because of the size, right? And Nolan Smith ended up going late first round to the to the Eagles, but Nolan he's a darn good football player right now.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you like about Jalen Walker? Where you have him in your top 10?
I think he did 2 things really well last year. One was rush the passer with speed and relentlessness and quickness. I mean, he would get stopped sometimes because when you're 6'1.5", 240, against SEC tackles, you're gonna get stonewalled every now and then. But his effort is tremendous. He's a finisher. There's something about him that becomes clear after about 15, 20 plays. You watch him, we're like, all right, this dude's just got a knack for finishing plays off. The other thing he did really well that I appreciated, I mean, again, how this value is probably as big today as it's ever been in the game, and that's as a quarterback spy. Like he was really effective at kind of hemming in athletic quarterbacks and keeping that. Now, it didn't always work out. There were times in the Alabama game that the problem with Georgia too was that they were rotating defensive players so much. It was frustrating to watch on tape because the guy you were watching for 2 or 3 series would be off for an entire series, that sort of thing. But for the most part, I thought Walker's athleticism really translated to those 2 things. He dropped a little in zone. There were some coverage reps there, but like true linebacker reps, that's why people call him an edge, because you didn't really see a lot of it. There's not a lot of diagnosing going on where he was, reading his keys and flowing into the hole and making the play. So if that's what you want to do with him, like, you have to have a plan. And the reason, Nolan Smith has been largely a pass rusher is because that's what he's really good at. Now, I think Walker has a chance to be better. I wasn't a huge Nolan Smith fan coming out, but I like Walker a lot better. Again, normal year, maybe I have him just outside my top 10, but there's something to be developed here if you're patient and you have a plan.
So let's just quickly recap. And again, this is all just hypothetical, but Cam Ward to Tennessee, Travis Hunter to Cleveland. We got Carter going to the Giants, Will Campbell off the board to the Patriots, Mason Graham to Jacksonville, and Ashton Genty to the Raiders. So that brings us to the Jets at number 7.
I've heard offensive tackle a lot. Warren's been mentioned with them as well. I could see tight end. It's probably the first spot where you realistically could make a case for a tight end and say, yeah, I could see that, right? Aaron Glenn's there. Obviously, Lions defensive coordinator comes over trying to, turn the page. They've got Justin Fields at quarterback. I think it's definitely going to be predicated on playing good defense, running the football, play action, all that stuff. They have Garrett Wilson, but they don't really have that threat at tight end. But I keep coming back to the offensive line here. So if Campbell goes at 4 and you have Membu there, you did just lose Morgan Moses, who is a right tackle. I mean, it's not a big stretch to say he would work there. Now, they've invested pretty heavily there at the offensive line and with mixed results, I would say. Right. But, you got to get it right, and you have to figure this thing out. And Membu would be really good, I think, in a Justin Fields offense. He's great at pulling out into space. Run game was kind of Missouri's superpower last year, and they often went behind him in those key situations. So, that would line up for me. But again, you have to at least consider the tight end, and I could see maybe a defensive lineman too.
I just looking at I was looking at their depth chart right now, and I cannot see them if Membo is there.
I agree.
It just makes too much sense. And to your point about running the football, I think a new right tackle with this guy's talents and this guy's skill set would very much help with that.
I agree. I think that's the direction I would go.
Yeah, this one, seems to be one of those fits that just makes so much sense that it's like, but once you get to 7, there are some curveballs and
it's the Jets. You never know.
Yes, Jets. You never know. So maybe that is the Tyler Warren situation, but I like that you're going with Membo there. All right. So Carolina then at number 8.
Defense makes a ton of sense. They were they've kind of swung and missed on some offseason moves. They tried to get in on the DK Metcalf sweepstakes, I guess, weren't able to get him. So, they're looking for weapons for Bryce Young. They tried to get in on Milton Williams, easy for me to say, swung and missed there. So 3 technique, defensive presence of some sort. They have Derek Brown. They have some other pieces, but when you give up, how many points did they give up? 500 and whatever. I mean, it was the most in NFL history. It's a big number, and they got to bring it down. And, Dan Morgan, their GM, obviously played linebacker there. He's a defensive guy. They went Xavier Leggett in first round last year, came back and took a running back second who missed most of the year in Brooks. So I would be shocked if there isn't a heavy defensive influence on their draft starting at number 8. So, they've been tied to Jalen Walker, Mykel Williams, Shamar Stewart, some of those pass rushers who will be on the Bears board, I think. So this is certainly a position that Bears watching, and it's a little trickier to predict. I don't know exactly who their guy is, but I think it's maybe one of those 3 guys if I had to guess.
So going off your board, then do you want me to put down Walker on this?
I think Walker, okay. It would be really interesting. I think it makes some sense. I could live with that. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you're just going best player available on defense,
right? And not everybody. I talked to one team who I understand why. I mean, just looking at their system, they basically said we didn't really know what to do with him. He would be kind of a stand-up rusher for us, and we don't really have that. So there's some teams that look at Walker and say, really good player. He just doesn't sort of do what we're looking to do. And I would say maybe the Bears are one of those teams too, but can you find a way to use him somehow? I think that's kind of the conversation that's going to lead to where he gets drafted, as somebody says, yes, I have a plan for this guy.
So one pick away from the Bears now. We're at number 9 with the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
Tyler Warren's still on the board. Let's see here. Malachi Stark's still on the board. Will Johnson. But this is why I feel like the talent pool is kind of shrinking here, and there's only so many options before you're starting to talk about guys that could easily go anywhere between now and in deep into the 20s. It's just such a weird year with this draft.
And to add another ingredient to the soup, I mean, if you look at the betting markets, and of course I work for the NFL, I don't endorse betting, not at all. But if you take a peek at those things, you start looking between the numbers, and they have Shedeur Sanders over under at like 8.5. Mm-hmm. They have Saints predicted positions of drafting quarterback in the lead. I mean, I don't like, if you just went strictly by like, what do we need to line up tomorrow? Probably corner, offensive line, maybe D line, probably another receiver if they're being honest with themselves. Honestly, they have their top 3 quarterbacks if they want them. I mean, they drafted 2 the last 2 years. They have Derek Carr coming back. They paid him. They're gonna play him this year. But there's these breadcrumbs that keep adding up to a quarterback. I think if the Bears saw a quarterback go there, they do backflips that would just ensure that they have a choice. They can pick between their top 2 guys on their board or whatever it may be. So yeah, that would be a perfect scenario for Chicago if somehow, like, if they went Shedeur or Jackson Dart, whatever. Feels early to me, but I get it. So it's like the head versus the heart pick. Which do you really think? Hard to really know. I don't know what their plan is, and they're cap stricken. They have issues in a lot of different spots. They're probably not competing next year, but they have a veteran roster, so you kind of expect to be decent. I don't have a great feel for this pick, and it feels like a lot of other people are in that same spot.
Do you think this is a good spot to start a conversation about whether or not, like, teams like the Steelers, who literally, like, the entire morning in NFL Network, they're talking about Shedeur Sanders visiting with the Steelers? Do you think this is a window now where teams in the 20s, like, okay, trading up to 9 is a lot different than trading up to 3 for a quarterback? This range
absolutely.
where, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if I did. I think this is maybe the first spot that makes some sense, but again, high, but early, but that's kind of what you have to do. And if you're, the Jets have been mentioned as a possible quarterback team. I think once they pass on one, I don't realistically think they'll take one at 7. Carolina's not taking one. So 9 really becomes the first spot, I think, where you could see the first trickle of activity. But again, I keep going back and forth and saying, like, if they go strictly by need, it's probably a D lineman or a corner based on the available talent. But either they could draft a quarterback there and get rid of Jake Haener or whatever, and find room for this guy, or like you said, they could trade down to a team like Pittsburgh, like Cleveland. Cleveland has that 33rd pick. A lot of people love leading off day 2. That's a power spot. So that pick carries some value, and they'd be willing to trade next year's whatever, I'm sure, to move up. So just depends if there's a team out there that loves a quarterback enough to move all the way up to 9.
Well, it just seems to me like history tells us, though, that someone will. Like,
more often than not.
Like, chances are that, a quarterback's going to sneak in. It's not guaranteed, but sneak in ahead of the Bears at number 10, a second quarterback, I should say. And I have to say, when it comes to the Saints, I think it makes sense. Like, you just brought in a young offensive coach.
Yep.
The Bears have made this mistake before where they don't line up that timeline. They don't bring them in together. So if you're going to do that, do it now when the coach is just starting.
Yep.
You don't have to rush it because Derek Carr's still there. And when you talk about the salary cap, which we always talk about with the New Orleans Saints because they're always up against it, that's how you next year help to fix that problem
100%.
by turning to the rookie, and you move on from Derek Carr, and you could start to operate like a team that has a rookie quarterback contract like the Bears do right now. So to me, there are a lot of signs there that point to that as being a smart move. But then again, it's the Saints, and that's not really it's just not really their blueprint to follow usually.
Smart moves in the Saints don't go hand in hand. No, I know what you're saying. Yes, yeah. It really that's the point right there. You have Mickey's thinking. You know, we've seen how he's done business for years, and then you have this new head coach. And I'm, you know, again, I wonder how much Mickey is listening to Kellen Moore and his input on the quarterbacks. I would hope a lot. I would hope that would be a driving indicator of what they end up doing. But yeah, like when I've been on shows recently and people have asked, so where's Shedeur going to go? And I always say, I have no idea, but I'm probably going to just, short of projecting a trade, I'm probably going to just put him at number 9 and hope that he goes somewhere near there, you know, and because if he goes somewhere, it's probably to a pick not owned by its eventual owner, if that makes sense. You know, it's going to get moved probably. So, you know, like for this exercise, I don't think it's crazy to, like, for instance, I don't know that the Saints are necessarily going to swipe the Bears player if they don't take a quarterback. They could, I guess, with a defensive lineman or something, but I don't know that there's a scenario where it's like Heartbreak City, whoever they take. So that's another way to look at it.
Michael Penix Jr. went number 8 overall last year, and I think the Bears were one of the few teams who were just stunned by it. Just, it happens. Teams get desperate. They see an opportunity on a quarterback they like, and
yep,
you never know. For everyone listening right now saying this is not going to happen, you never know. You really
can happen.
Know.
It can happen. We've seen it. Yes.
So here we go. Ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
We're at 10 now, and I do think it's smart for this exercise to put a second quarterback in the top 9. Like regardless of how it all falls out, I do think that makes sense.
I'm fine with that. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm looking at your board here.
I'm good because I don't have it in front of me.
The best player available is Tyler Warren at number 6. And the next best player, you have to go down to number 9, is Will Johnson at cornerback. So, and, you know, just going in, I have to say, because we have our Bears 100 at CHGO, Tyler Warren would also be my best player available here of the guys that we have left in this situation. So what are you thinking here?
Let's talk through Warren and what he would be in the Bears offense. See, I view him as being very similar in some respects, you know, in terms of the role he's going to play to what Cole Kmet already gives you. I'm not saying another tight end couldn't do them some good. Absolutely. You know, I mean, I love 12 personnel. That's my favorite, you know, personnel grouping, but, you know, you want to have a tight end who's more of an inline guy and then more of a flex guy. I would argue, I mean, you guys can feel free to tell me if I'm wrong, but I think Cole Kmet is kind of one of the better inline guys, as is Tyler Warren. I mean, I feel like, yeah, you can put him under center. They did that at Penn State. You could line him up in the backfield as a fullback or as a wing or an offset guy. You could move him and put him in motion. You can flex him wide, slot, I'll do all that stuff. But to me, he's more of your classic body for that inline position. I just think there'd be a little bit of redundancy there, a little bit of overlap. That may not be a terrible thing. And he's not such a dynamic, freaky athlete that, you know, you do it and just say, we're willing to live with that element, you know, and we're fine with having 2 guys that do stuff somewhat similarly. So, you know, like for me, the better tight end fit is actually Colston Loveland or Mason Taylor or Arroyo or one of those guys. So I'm in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I think one of those guys will be there at 39 or 41. I think those are the numbers of their picks. But yeah, I mean, that it's hard to play that way, but you do have to think 2-dimensionally and try to imagine what will be there the next time you swing back around. I don't think Tyler Warren's their first choice. Could he be an option? Yeah. But I would tend to look more to that pass rush role and just have another guy to add to the mix, because Adengbo to me is more of a power end than a true rusher and sweats a little hot and cold in the pass rush department. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean,
well, two thoughts on what you said about Warren. One, I think Ben Johnson would love just to have, to use their phrasing, more elite weapons, and I think
Sure.
Warren can fit into that. Like, they could talk themselves into seeing Tyler Warren as an elite weapon, just given everything he's done at Penn State.
Yep.
But the second part of that, because this came out of the NFL owners meetings last week, is how Ben Johnson wants different variety amongst his position groups. So to your point about Cole Kmet, is there enough variety of, is the skill set different enough for him to take Tyler Warren with Cole Kmet already on the roster? Or does he have to wait for Mason Taylor on day 2 of the draft? So I think if for the Bears, we're talking about that, like that's coming up. I believe that's what Ben Johnson is bringing up in conversations at Hallis Hall when Tyler Warren comes to, when he's showing on the board there at Hallis Hall.
He's such a fun player. I don't want to make it seem like he's a one-trick pony. I mean, but I just feel like in the back, my heart is kind of telling me like, I think they could take him, but it's not the first guy that I'm landing on for that reason. So yeah, I mean, again, I think you make a good point, which is that the more offensive threats you have, the better it is, especially a guy who, can do some trick play stuff. I mean, you want to bring that into your playbook. There's probably few better guys in this class that have been involved in that. He caught I think he lined up at center, caught a double pass from, 2 different quarterbacks at USC last year, and one of which is playing at Mizzou. But yeah, I mean, it just, they were really creative with them last year. So it's hard not to make that connection. But to the second point there, I just wonder if that's going to be because tight end, let's face it, is somewhat of a luxury position, and unless your roster is all tip top, and they may not quite be there.
Yeah, I mean, this is I think it's extremely layered. And I keep flip-flopping back and forth. I have come to the realization that this might actually be a situation that unfolds on draft night that the Bears have to weigh.
Yeah. 100%.
Now I disagree a little bit in the fact that I think Tyler Warren's a little bit more of a weapon that can do he's just more of a Swiss Army knife to me than Cole Kmet is. Now, is there some redundancy? Of course there is. And is it the highest position that you need to address right now? I don't think so at all. So it would especially be considered a luxury pick. And I don't know if the Bears are in a spot right now where they can really say luxury pick a good idea when they still need to fortify their offensive and defensive lines, even after what they did in free agency. So that part of it's tough for me. But at the same time, I think, it's not like their depth at tight end's outstanding. They have Cole Kmet, Durham Smythe, and it's like the rest of the things just sort of up in the air, to be honest with you. So I could see it happen, but I'm with you in that I'm wondering how those conversations in the draft room would go. I could certainly see Ben Johnson loving Tyler Warren though, and loving all the different things he could do with him, and that at the end of the day also matters a lot because you did just hire this guy. You're paying him a crap ton of money to be your head coach, and you need to trust him if he's got a weapon, if he sees the guy as a weapon. And then I don't know if you heard this, Eric, but when I talked to Ben Johnson last week on CHGO, he brought up how Dennis Allen spoke up about how much of a matchup nightmare he would be. And I don't know that you look at any other tight ends in the Bears room right now that I think Cole Kmet's a problem, but when you're game planning against the Bears, are you really going like, oh man, that's somebody we really have to worry about this week?
I mean, how many games did Cole get 3 or fewer targets last year? I know it was a different system, but there were so many times I'd be watching the Bears as an outsider, as a third party going, do they throw to this guy ever? I know he had, a ton against Indy and then went into, put on ice for a few weeks and whatever. So yeah, I'm with you. I like Cole Kmet a lot as a football player. I had a pretty strong grade on him coming out. I've not necessarily been disappointed by anything he does. Seems like a perfect guy for the locker room and for Caleb and all that. But yeah, right. It's not like he is a.
That's why I think they can coexist. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's why I do think if you did go down this road, they could coexist because I mean, we like him here on the show for all the same reasons you just said, but there's also a reason why Cole was a second round pick, and we're talking about Tyler Warren possibly going in the top 10.
Fair point. I would love to see what the debate would be. Obviously, we'll never be totally privy to it, but let's say Vegas at 6 doesn't go Ginty and they go defensive line, rusher, whatever, something like that. And then Carolina takes a different rusher or whatever. And so now it's even more of a debate, but this time it's between Warren and Ginty. That would be fascinating. I mean, obviously I think you'd be in decent shape either way. I would not hate either pick. Both guys are in my top 6 overall. So both would be like value picks at that spot. And I'm sorry. I don't think the Bears are winning the Super Bowl next year. Anything could happen. Maybe they're this year's Washington, who knows, but like, you're still getting good football players. I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here because I always do that and it works really well for me. But I really do think that like, it wouldn't necessarily be my first pick to take a tight end or a running back, but I also wouldn't hate it either. I think I could absolutely talk myself into it. So I can't wait. I would say 7, 8, 9 are really is a really sneaky, interesting little cluster of picks, or 6 through 9, even if you want to. And then we have no idea what would be left for Chicago in that situation if that went a little chaotic.
Well, Eric, I want to ask you about one player before we get out of here. A defensive end, a pass rusher.
Well, hang on, Johns. We didn't really come to a conclusion here.
Yeah, hold on. No. This is part of the conversation.
Okay. Because I all of us need to be put on the spot here and what we would do.
Yes.
But go ahead.
Shemar Stewart.
Yeah, I knew you were going there.
All the testing numbers are outstanding. The size is there for Dennis Allen.
Yep.
But then you look at the production. I don't know how you feel about that, but to me, you got a high ceiling, also high floor player where, maybe he doesn't become like an all-pro, but he's going to play in the league a long time just based on his athletic traits, his physical gifts. Like, how do you feel about him at number 10 for the Bears?
Let me ask you a quick follow-up question and then I'll answer it. Have Bears fans, has this been like the pick that everybody's frightened of, like in mock drafts? Like, is this the one where everybody's like Leonard Floyd or whatever? I don't know. I mean,
but Leonard Floyd, I think, is, again, maybe not a Pro Bowler every year, maybe not an all-pro player.
Not a bad football player at all.
No, not at all. Yeah. Long career, productive player.
But they're different. I'm not trying to compare the two. I'm just saying, like, I was kind of wondering if Bears fans were nervous about it coming down to, Mykel Williams versus Shemar Stewart. Both guys have to answer production questions. They weren't, I would argue Stewart more than Williams, just because Williams was hurt for last year. He's younger, but still a really young guy. I mean, I think he turns 22 during this season. 6'5", 265 pounds, tested through the roof. And it's not as if he was a bad football player. I think that's the thing everybody thinks is this sort of chicken with his head cut off running around out there. But he was on a really good defensive line the last couple years and really wasn't all that productive. I think he had one forced fumble in his career. He was basically a occasional part-time starter prior to this season. So nowhere near a full-time guy, but again, less than 5 sacks in 3 years is a little bit concerning. The guy you would hope he becomes is like Danielle Hunter. Hunter had, I think, 3 sacks at LSU, didn't really do much in the production department. There were some teams that were rightfully scared to death of that. And, he's proved him wrong. He's been really good. So, I mean, I think Stewart carries his weight exceptionally well. I mean, he could go up to like 280 something, I think, and also play in the 250s or 260s. Super springy, rangy guy for his size. Made some incredible track downs from behind or at the line of scrimmage. But again, I don't know if the instincts are really a strength for him right now. It would be nice to be in that third role and kind of learn and sit and play on passing situations or whatever, but he is a little bit lacking in the recognition department. You see guys go through his gap, you see him fail to disengage, fail to wrap up, fail to finish. In some cases, he's close, he's right there, but it doesn't always translate. So I get why there's a little hesitation with him, because it is kind of maddening at times.
Yeah, too many red flags for me at number 10.
He's scary.
In terms of the lack of instincts. I actually like the Leonard Floyd conversation because I tend to agree. I think this guy could have a similar career where he's playing in the league for like a decade, but
Right.
Is it going to take him to that second contract before he finally figures out how to play the game? And
I
that's
mean,
what you can't have happen if you're taking it, because it's great Leonard Floyd's been productive for some of these other teams, but he wasn't productive enough for the Bears, and that's the team that drafted him. So you got to get that right, and that's why I would stay away from him. So let's wrap this up. If you're not going Tyler Warren, Eric, who would be your pick here for the Bears?
I think Mykal Williams makes a lot of sense. Now, some people have him lower. I get it, but he's not even 21 yet. He's got the perfect dimensions. Maybe not quite as strapped and not quite as freaky as Stewart, but certainly no one's going to look at him and not think he's an NFL player. I mean, he passes the eye test. I think also passes the tape test too. I really liked what I saw. I think there's some development that needs to happen with him. He kind of defaults to the same pass rush moves over and over again a little bit. Had a season marred by injury. It was hard to know how much it was an ankle sprain, I believe. How much it really affected him. It seemed to affect his get off a little bit, but he's one of those kind of freaky Georgia front seven players who can do a lot of different things. We saw how many Georgia guys the last couple of years were ready-made when they got in the NFL. Not all of them, not Keely Ringo or Nolan Smith or a few other guys, but some of the offensive guys, some of the O-linemen, some of the D-linemen, when they get into the league, they're prepared. I mean, that's something that matters. So for a team that's looking for both instant impact and also long upside, if you will, this dude's pretty good, and he checks a lot of character boxes from what I've heard. Like he's pretty clean from that regard. So I just think there's a lot to like about him, and there's not a ton of downside with him.
This is from Dane on Williams. Served as a team captain for 4 games in 2024. Strong character feedback from coaches. This is from Kirby Smart. He's very versatile for us in terms of us on the field, but there is no greater value than what he does in the locker room. A great leader for us.
It's a strong quote.
Yeah, I think he checks
do a lot of hyperbole this time of year, but
yeah.
I mean I believe Kirby when he says that. That backs up what I've heard about him.
Yeah. I think he checks a lot of the Bears boxes. In terms of size, I think he's a Dennis Allen fit. We talk about the length and the size that he has. I think he fits the character. Position of high priority, which would tight end would not be at this spot. So, and I think you can justify the lack of production last year to those injuries, like you brought up, that held him back. And so, I could definitely see that being a fit for the Bears in that spot.
He's an emerging force. He's strong too. I mean, again, it's like he still hasn't been in an NFL weight program yet either. I mean, like I still think he can add strength and get maybe even a little bigger. I mean, he's a pretty looking athlete, and I think he's got a lot of unrealized potential.
All right.
My pick, you're wondering?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I might take Tyler Warren.
I wouldn't hate it. I really wouldn't. I just, again, it would be another weapon for Caleb and another piece for Ben Johnson. I would give that a grade of a B+ or something like that. I mean, I think you can swing back in round 2 and get a rusher too. So that's the other benefit of this class.
Now, I may change my mind in a couple of weeks when we do our final mock draft, but maybe it's the recency bias of this, but it's some of the things Ben Johnson said, but it's also some of the things that Ryan Poles said about the play identity that the Lions had, this physical, aggressive, in-your-face mentality. And you hear you read these scouting reports on Tyler Warren. I'm like, oh, gosh, that guy fits.
He really does.
The play style, like the aggressiveness, the nastiness, I think it was Lance, NFL.com had this. How did he describe it? Like just plays like a badass on the field. I'll look it up before we get out of here.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that's it.
Like,
I mean, he's all over the place. He's like the Cam Scattaboo of tight ends, I guess, right? I mean, just barreling through people and really laying it out there. And he gives effort as a blocker. He really does. I think he's got a lot to learn in that department, but like you see kind of TJ Hawkinson up in Minnesota, that's kind of the same vibes you get from this guy, I would say. And that's a good thing.
This is how Lance Erline put it. Warren plays with swagger and best player on the field energy. I just love that.
Yeah, no, he does. I mean,
Great
look, if you watched the Penn State game last year, you came away from every game being like, well, that was the most entertaining and best player that was on the field. And by the way, Abdul Carter was also on the field.
Oh yeah.
So so that says a lot about Tyler Warren. And I do think that, at the end of the day, so I like both of these picks.
Yep.
And it might actually, I think they both make sense for the Bears. And we'll get criticized if we go Tyler Warren over the defensive lineman because, we talk out of both sides of our mouth all the time too, saying they need to address the trenches and now let's go get a tight end. But at the end of the day, this has to be about Caleb. This has to be about not screwing this up.
We barely even talked about that. That's a great point. I mean, you still have to support your quarterback, no doubt about it.
And push comes to shove. It'd be great if there was a left tackle staring at you right there that you knew was just going to go to the Hall of Fame and be Caleb's left tackle for the next 10 years. But that's not the situation here at number 10. So to me, going best player left on my board, going off of that mentality of like, you can't screw this up with Caleb. If I have to pick between these two, it's tough, but I would go with Tyler Warren in that spot. I do not hate your
just
pick,
to back
though,
up the point too, like having those two early second round picks in a draft where, 15 to 45, there may not be that much difference. Like, that allows you to take a luxury pick like Warren or Genty or whatever, if that scenario arrives, because you have two picks coming in a pretty short span, and the positions you're passing up at are going to be in decent shape at those spots. You might be able to get Josh Simmons or Donovan Jackson at 39. You might be able to get Landon Jackson from Arkansas, the pass rusher at 41. You know what I mean? So there are plenty of scenarios where if you do go off the map a little bit position-wise on the first one, you have those two picks to kind of buttress you on the way back. So again, I would think it would make sense.
Yeah. All right. Eric, we kept you way too long.
Greatly
appreciate your time, especially just 2 weeks away from the draft. Thank you so much. I know our listeners and viewers will love this exercise that we did.
Feel free to edit it down, boys. I had a blast either way. So it's good talking to you. And now I'm kind of rethinking some things with Chicago, which is a good thing.
This should be an annual thing. I love this.
I love it.
Yeah. This was good. All right. Get all Eric's coverage, NFL.com. It's outstanding. Check them out. Thanks so much, man.
See you, fellas.
All right, Eric Edholm joining us. We got to get out of here, but I think everybody really enjoyed that. I know I did, so it's a fun. And I think honestly, there's a very realistic chance that these are the same conversations we're having on draft night, John.
So just like to be clear, like these are the type of conversations like teams will sit down and debate, and they will look at the big board and circle teams that could move up for a quarterback. They will circle teams that they're curious about and very concerned about in terms of taking players that they like, just in terms of the same roster needs. These conversations happen in real NFL buildings, and I just can't thank Eric enough for his time to go through the top 10 for us.
Yeah, that was great. Outstanding. I don't even think we told him, Eric, keep him that long. So greatly appreciate it. He does outstanding work. We will be back next week, obviously keeping all these conversations going. We'll see if there's any new developments at all. We are starting to get a little bit of clarity, I feel like, in the first 5 picks of where things might go, especially in the first 3. So that's always helpful. We'll continue to follow it all. Make sure you're following us at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. Go to HogeJahns.com for all the merch. I should mention this too. I know it's the CHGO thing, but if you're looking for a place to hang out on draft night, we have an awesome draft party, 115 Bourbon Street in Marionette Park. Tickets on sale now, all chgo.com/events. And new this year, all the tickets include all you can eat and drink as well. So we're going all out. 115 Bourbon Street's an outstanding venue. We're going to have a lot of fun. So Lance Briggs is going to be there, Corey Wooten, Greg Braggs, Mark Carmen, our entire CHGO crew. Johns is going to be locked in House Hall.
Eating pizza.
That's a good point. You will have pizza, though. Go Lou Mal's again?
Eating pizza, maybe a deep dish and some RC Cola.
Can't go anywhere without the RC Cola. You love the RC Cola. All right. We'll talk to you next week.
See ya.